One of the great Psalms that I would like to look at in this video from the Hebrew text and do again, looking at each word grammatically, as well as seeking to understand the interpretation of each verse and the reading of the Hebrew along with it. This psalm has to do with the joy that happens when one experiences God's forgiveness. It's a beautiful psalm. It possibly goes back to David's sin with Bathsheba and what happened after that. So we begin in verse 1. Le David maskil, ashrei nesui, pesha, kisui, chata'av. A psalm belonging to David, a maskil. Maskil, we're not exactly sure what it means, but it may look at some type of musical instrument. This seems to be the most accepted meaning. And then he talks about happiness. Ashrei, happy is he whose transgression is pardoned or is forgiven. Notice nasui is a cal passive participle from nasa, which means to be lifted up. Sin and its guilt can be heavy. And the thought is, happy is the person who has sinned like David, and yet whose sin is lifted up, taken away. That's the thought that I believe the psalmist is wanting to teach. And then kesui, chata'a. Happy is not only the ones whose transgression is taken away, but whose sin is covered. Notice kasa means to cover, and it's a lamed he verb. And here we have a cal passive participle again from kasa. Historically, it was probably a final. I said a lamed he final. Historically, it was probably a lamed he verb, a final he, and possibly it seems to have been a final yod form to start with. And here we have the yod reappearing. And the root again means to cover. So what a beautiful thought. One does not see sin anymore. I mean, God does not. Let me put it that way. He has forgiven and taken away and covered it and carried it away. What a beautiful assurance this text is giving when there is confession to the Lord of what one has done if it's contrary to his will. We move on in verse 2. Ashrei Adam lo yakshov Adonai lo avon ve'ein berucho rimaya. Happy is the man whom the Lord does not count to him iniquity, and in whose spirit there is no guile. Notice yakshov here is from chashav, to reckon or account. It's the count imperfect, third masculine singular from chashav. And what he's saying here is, happy is the person unto whom the Lord does not count and reckon iniquity. David is experiencing God's grace and God's forgiveness, and in whose spirit there is no guile. One needs to confess when one has done a wrong before the Lord, and not to be in any way hiding anything or hypocritical. It needs to be a sincere confession. This is what David is saying, and happy is the one who does that. Then we move on. He describes what it was like before he really confessed to the Lord. And so we pick that up in verses 3 and 4. Notice he says in verse 3, Ki hecharashti belu atsamai b'sha'agati kol hayom. When I kept silent, my bones wore away. And through my groaning, or in my groaning, all the day. In other words, his conscience was constantly reminding him before God of what he had done. And there was guilt, and it was heavy. And he said, my bones wore away when I kept silent. Notice, hecharashti is from charash, to be silent. It's a hifil perfect, first common singular, from charash. So when I kept silent, my bones, balu, wore away. The root is bala, a lamed hey verb. It's a cow, a perfect third person plural from bala. So when I kept silent, my bones wore away with groaning all the day. In other words, his guilt was affecting his physical well-being, and he was groaning. And that is true. I think the psalmist is saying that when one has broken God's law, has gone against the Lord, there is that conviction of conscience that also affects one's health and one's body, the psalmist is saying. And so after describing these physical symptoms, he then says, Ki yomam v'layla tikbad alay yadecha nechpak l'shadi b'harvonei kayetz selah. That is, for by day and by night your hand was heavy upon me. My sap was turned as in the droughts of summer. Notice here, tikbad, the verb, is from the root kavad, to be heavy. It's a cow imperfect, third feminine singular from kavad, going with yad. So your hand was heavy upon me, and then my sap, lesadi, is turned as in the droughts of summer. Notice nekpak is from hafak, to turn. It is the nifal, a perfect third masculine singular from hafak, to turn. So my sap is turned as in the har, as in the droughts of summer. Har boneh kayetz. Now notice the idea here, I think, is that his vitality was brought so low that it was like sap that it loses. A tree, for example, loses its life moisture when it's hot in the summertime. And I think that's the point here. His strength, his vitality, again, the physical suffering that he had gone through before confession. And then we move to the confession and what he did in verse 5. Chatati odiacha v'avoni lo chisiti. Amarti odeh ale fesha'ai la'adonai v'ata nasata avon chatati selah. What a beautiful verse. He said, my sin I acknowledge. I cause to be known to God. It's not that God did not know about his sin, but he wants acknowledgement of it before him. And that is what confession is. And notice, hodiacha is from the root yada, to know. And here we have a hifil, imperfect, first common singular from yada, followed by the pronominal suffix, second masculine singular in the cha. So my sin, I cause to make known. By the way, this hifil, imperfect, with the holim vav, shows us that the root, the pei yod root, yada, historically was a pei vav root, vada. And when you put the hifil together, or when the hifil developed historically, it would have been al diacha becoming o ho o diacha. That is, we would have had a pathak vav changing to a long holim vav in the first vowel. So we're clearly looking at a hifil here. I made known my sin, and hatati mean my covenant breaking. I made known. But avoni, and my iniquity, I have not hidden. Notice kisiti is from chasa, to hide. It's a lamed hey root. And here we have a pl, perfect, first common singular from kasa, to hide. So I have not hidden. I said, amarti, notice amar is the root, kal, perfect, first common singular from amar. I said, I will make known, I will confess, or I will make known my transgression. Notice here, odeh is from yada, to make known or cause to make known. So again, I will make known, cause to make known my confession, and I will make known my transgression, or concerning ale fesha'ai, my transgressions, I should say. The root is from pasha, to mean transgression, and here it's in the plural, with that plural, can I say, with the first person singular pronominal suffix that goes on a plural form. So I made known my transgressions to the Lord. It wasn't just one sin, but it was a sin, many sins, David is saying. When we think, if we apply it to Bathsheba, it was not only a sin against Bathsheba, but against Uriah, against the Lord, and on and on. So I made known my transgression. And then we have the beautiful conclusion. Va'ata nasata avon chatati selah. That is, and you, by the way, this is very emphatic in Hebrew. Ata, personal pronoun, second masculine singular, and nasata also is, we have the ta, the suffix here, which is second masculine singular from nasa, meaning to lift up or to carry away. You lifted up the iniquity of my sin. What a beautiful thought here. You removed it. You lifted it up. And now he's going to find relief. And the iniquity of my sin, here we have avon in construct with chatati, chatat meaning sin, or chata, and in construct becoming chatat with the pronominal suffix, first person singular in the Hidduch Yod. So you forgave me. You lifted up and took away. And it's very emphatic here. When David did what was required of him to make confession, the Lord responded and carried away the sin that he had committed, but he had to make it known. And I'm reminded in the New Testament of 1 John 1:9, if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. So now he begins to exhort others. Notice he says in verse 6, Alzot yitpalel kol chasid elecha le'et matzo rak l'shetef mayim rabim elav lo yagiu. That is, for this, on account of this, let everyone that is godly pray unto you. Notice yitpalel is a hitpael imperfect third masculine singular from palal, to pray. You have the yit prefix and the pathak doubling of the middle radical and the lamed, and so it's a hitpael imperfect, and it's adjussive. So let everyone that is godly pray unto you, la'ate, at the time of finding. Notice here, matzo is a cal infinitive construct. At the time of finding, there is a time when God's grace can be found, and it's important to pray and not let it go by when there needs to be confession. I'm reminded of Isaiah chapter 55 verse 6, seek the Lord while he may be found. And so he said, I found this, rak l'shetef mayim rabim, for let the God, everyone that is godly, pray in a time when you might be found, at a time of finding, literally, or when he might be found, at a time of his finding. Surely then, when the great waters overflow, or at the time of the overflowing of the great waters, they will not reach unto him, unto the godly one that confesses. Notice yagia is from naga, to reach or cause to reach. Here it is a hifil, imperfect, third masculine singular. They will not reach unto, or third masculine plural, they will not reach unto him. In other words, the imagery here is that of a flood, and he's above it on a rock and being protected because of his confession. And so he goes on. Ata seter li matzar titzareni, rone falet tesovaveni selam. You are my hiding place. Emphatic. You, Lord, are my hiding place. And then preserve me from the adversary. You will, I should say, preserve me from the adversary. Notice, or from any type of adversity. You're going to protect me, he's saying. Notice, ketzareni is from natsar, to keep, or to preserve. Here we have a cal imperfect second masculine singular from natsar. So you will keep me. We have the hinge in the ain and the pronominal suffix in the e. You will keep me or preserve me from the adversary, and with songs of deliverance. Rone fale tesovaveni selah. With songs of deliverance. Here we have two nouns in construct, and then you will surround me or encompass me or compass me about. Notice savav means to surround or put around, and here we have a polal imperfect second masculine singular from savav. Notice suv is the form, a middle weak form, geminating the bait here, the final consonant in this polal form. So with songs of deliverance, you will encompass me about Selah. And then what a beautiful thought here. The Lord is his hiding place, and he's able to turn all the pain now into singing because of the gratitude he has of God's forgiveness. So then we move on to verse 8. Askilecha ve'orecha b'derek zu telei. I will instruct you and I will teach you in the way which you will go. Notice askilcha is from sakal, to instruct or make you wise. Here we have a hifil, imperfect, first common singular from sakal, and followed by the pronominal suffix, second masculine singular in the cha. So I will instruct you and I will teach you. Here we have yara is the verb to teach, a final hay form. We have a hifil, imperfect, first common singular here from yara. So I will teach you, followed by the pronominal suffix in the cha, second masculine singular. In the way, zu here means which, here in this poetic context, you will go, telek. Telek is from halak, to go. Here we have a cow, imperfect, second masculine singular from halak. The hay has elided, and so we have compensatory lengthening from a hilik to etc. in this imperfect form. So I will give counsel, and I will teach you in the way which you shall go, and then I'm going to counsel you. Iatsa alecha eini. My eye will give counsel. My eye will counsel you, since it is upon you. I'm going to show you how to come through life, from, as you confess now, how to keep going faithfully to me. Notice iatsa is from the root ya'atz, iatsa from ya'atz, meaning to counsel. And here we have a cow, imperfect, first person singular from ya'atz, in this pei yod verb, ya'atz. So I will counsel you, my eye will. I thought there was a wonderful statement in the Sumsino commentary, page 94 by Cohen. It says, with a divine word of counsel in the ear and the eye of providence watching from above, the traveler in the pathway of life will be safe. I like that quote here. So then we move on to verse 9. Al to you, kasus, kefered ein havin, bemeteg, veresen, edyo livlon, bal karov elecha. Do not be as the horse, as the mule, with no understanding, which do not have understanding. Notice to you here is from haya. It's a cow imperfect jussive, second masculine plural from haya, a lamed hay root. So do not be as the horse or as the mule that which has no understanding. Havin is a hifil infinitive construct here, from being, to understand. So don't be as the horse or the mule, which has to be held by bit and bridle. Notice he goes on, Bemeteg veresen hedyo livlom. That is, with bit and with bridle, whose mouth, whose trappings, it can mean, but I think here it's referring to the mouth, whose mouth live lom, which means to be held, because it would run away without bit and bridle. And so don't be like that, he's saying in this, can I say, jussive form. And then we move on, the bote, the Adonai chesed sevovavenu, that is, um, and that they might not come near unto you. In other words, the mouth has to be held with bit and bridle so that the mule would not come near to you and be hurtful to you. I think that's the thought. So don't be like that, he's saying. Notice Baal here is used with the infinitive construct, karo, cow infinitive construct from karab, to come near, that it might not come near unto you. And then he continues, Rabim machovim la rasha, v'havoteach v'adonai chesed sevevenu. That is, many are the sorrows of the wicked. And how true the psalmist is saying. Those that do wrong have many sorrows and pains because of God's, can I say, judgment, and even in the conscience of what goes on. But they, in verse 10 then, but he who trusts in the Lord, notice boteach is from batach, to trust. It's a cow active participle, or a cow participle, masculine singular, from batach. The one who trusts in the Lord, mercy, sevovenu, sevovevenu, mercy will encompass him about. Again, we have a polel imperfect, third masculine singular from savav, to su, to encompass about. Notice we have a final u here, and historically it would have been something like sevovevenhu, and the hay by reverse assimilation has gone into the noon, causing the doggy's forte. And then finally, verse 11, simhu ve'adonai ve'gilu tzadikim ve'harninu kol yoshrei le. That is, be glad in the Lord. Notice simhu is a is a cow imperative masculine plural from samach. So be glad in the Lord and rejoice, O righteous ones, we could say. Notice gil, middle weak verb, means to rejoice. It's a cow imperative masculine plural. So rejoice, righteous ones, and shout for joy. V'harninu from Ranan. And here we have a hifil imperative masculine plural from Ranan. So shout for joy, all the upright ones of heart. Yoshrei, I'm understanding, is a cow participle masculine plural from yashar, to be upright. So what a beautiful psalm that talks about the happiness, the joy when one experiences forgiveness, the pain of conscience before forgiveness that David experienced, and even how it affected his body, followed then by acknowledging his sin, and how the Lord responded and lifted him up and set him up high from any judgments that would come, and gave him the reality, the feeling and knowledge that his sin had been covered and that it had been removed. And he wants to instruct others to do the same. Don't go on with that heart of unconfession before the Lord. What a beautiful, beautiful psalm that has to do with, when I think of the New Testament, with confession unto the Lord. I'm reminded of 1 John 1:9, if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. So a beautiful psalm on the joy and the happiness of one who has experienced God's forgiveness. And I believe, as a Christian minister, that as I look at the New Testament, a confession to Christ and recognizing his atoning work for our sins, it brings happiness, it brings relief to one's soul. And then also, can I say, daily, when Christians are willing to confess to the Lord, there is a joy before the Lord. And David so beautifully, I think, is expressing this in this wonderful psalm of joy in forgiveness.